Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is Ether Amara. In today's video, I wanted to give a quick run through of another book that I've been doing some reviews here on. I really had some thoughts when it comes to understanding the matriarch as a woman, understanding how to psychologically build daughters in a honorable manner and fashion as a mom, and how important it is for the boy child to have positive female influences in their surroundings that are going to aid them in living a healthy and upstanding sense of livelihood. So I'm going to be referencing two different sections of books that I have gained a lot of contrast from, as I have stated before, from the Fire in the Belly on Being a Man book by Sam Keen. I've got a section here that I'm going to draw some contrast from and share some of my thoughts and reasonings behind the importance I feel to really stand ground in the understanding of the boy child, being a girl mom, understanding how important it is to raise a girl from a very young age to a likeness and understanding of a boy, the things that they live through in their lives and their experiences, and how to gain likeness in one another. So I'm going to go through a section here, and in this chapter, this is called Ending the Blame Game. So I'm going to go through ending the blame game in that section. And then I'm just going to give a little bit of information into the importance of memory. I've got my Teaching with the Brain in Mind book. It talks a lot about the child's brain, their understanding of things, and I thought it would be really good to go through the different understandings of memory when it comes to reflexive memory, emotion and memory, and procedural memory. All of these things, how they can play into a child's experiences as they get older, understanding why in particular boys have certain experiences that they do and wrap their heads around certain understandings that are complete fallacies in our society today that I am definitely adamant about debunking and really creating a bridge for young people to keep themselves in a likeness to one another and not to be cruel to one another. So first I'm going to go through and I'm going to read the rules of ending the blame game. So there are a couple of rules here that it shows, and I'm just going to go ahead and read the first chapter of this section. This is page 208. So I'm just going to read through here. It states, to end the painful dynamics that cripple both men and women, we must first lay bare the pathology of the normal relationship between the genders and understand the rules that bind us as antagonists in a genderal blame game. Here is a review of the rules we need to become conscious of in order to break them and reconstruct our relationships. So rule number 1 states here, antagonists in warfare and the gender game are made artificially alien to one another. Strangers are turned into enemies. Differences are viewed as deviations. The gender game begins with an artificial separation of masculine and feminine qualities, an act of intellectual and psychological fascism that forces the complex beauty of actual men and women into the two-column goose step of masculine and feminine attributes. Rule number 2 states here, the definition of men and women in the gender game has been created by a process of exclusion and negation. We are not they. Manliness and womanliness are both defined by a process of decision and denial. Each gender is assigned half of the possible range of human virtues and vices. To be manly is to be unwomanly, therefore misogynistic. To be womanly is to be unmanly, therefore misanthropic. We do not know what human beings would be like if encouraged to develop their innate Promise without the systematic crippling effect of the gender game. Every man and every woman is half of a crippled whole. Rule number 3 states in the antagonistic gender game, the players may switch positions, one up, one down, sadist, or sadomasochist, from time to time. Rule number 4, the game requires the players to remain unconscious of their roles. Blind passion is the logic of history. We go to war blindly. Only mature love is fully conscious. Rule number 5 states here, since the players must remain unconscious for the game to continue, cultural institutions must inform each new generation in a way that will create an unconscious compliance with the rules. The rites of passage that confirm boys and girls in the appropriate manly and womanly virtues are rituals that inoculate belief and obedience, not reflection. If the roles are questioned, the game is disturbed. So I'm going to stop there on rule number 5 and just kind of draw into where I'm going with this, why I feel it is so important in a generation today where there are a lot of gender games, a lot of, like it states there, kind of unconscious biases when it comes to what, negates womanliness, what, negates, feminist qualities and attributes, and what negates, masculine and manly qualities and attributes as well. I feel like it's really important in a generation where there is a lot of confusion into the roles that, boys and girls are supposed to play in each other's lives. I feel like, as somebody who is very well understanding of self and understanding of maturity and understanding of what true love actually is. I think it's important for children to be taught from a young age, especially, in contrast with a boy child, to understand that feelings are not, innately feminine. To have sadness or to feel sadness, for another or for oneself is not a feminine quality. It is a human attribute that we all inhabit. And I feel like a lot of young men and boys who grow up with this toxic masculinity fall into this kind of, like it states here, this gender game where they feel like they have to be, a sadomasochist, in a very abruptly aggressive, way, trying to assert their position in an environment that may, you know, what they're trying to express may not be clear, but it is, their behavior is being reflected in a way that is aggressive. And I feel like a lot of boys lack the guidance. In a lot of ways, I feel like it is a lack of guidance from the female image that they are supposed to respond to. I feel it is very important for boys to have positive female influences that are in their surroundings. I feel like boys are very much, put into this ball game where it's like they are only meant to perform in a sexually, downtrodden manner. And I feel like a lot of boys really end up, getting the short end of the stick when it comes to creating relationships with the opposite gender. I feel like a lot of people think that, for the sake of gender, only man and a woman are supposed to do one thing, which falls down into a sexually based, um, you know, understanding. And I think it is very unhelpful for young people to only believe that if you, as a woman, are a kind hearted, genuine natured, mature woman who does not, play on the role of a man and being the lewd force that is the temptress in a man's life, that you must not have feminine attributes. And I feel like it is very important to debunk this theory that femininity is in conjunction with sexuality. Femininity and sexuality are very separate, entities in themselves. And I feel like it's really important for boys to be able to see that in their lives, that a woman can be, gentle, kind, and loving and supportive without playing into your sexual desires that society automatically tells you that you are supposed to gain from any experience with any woman in their lives. I feel like that definitely sets them up for abuse. It definitely sets them up for being exploited. And I think that it's definitely something that our society really needs to, you know, regeneralize what it means for a boy to be a boy, what it means for a girl and, a boy to have common ground without there being any type of physicality in that interaction. So I really like in this book when it talks about, reflexive memory. And I'm just going to read here, it just talks a lot about the brain and where memories are stored and how reflexive things can become for a person in their mind. And it states here messages travel through the spinal cord along nerve pathways to the muscles. And your memories are stored in the parietal lobe, frontal lobe, and cerebellum. Muscles are activated by an electrical impulse. So, just kind of stating that reflexive kind of memory idea here, I think that, when a boy has only been shown one way to interact with women, there is a natural innate chemical reflex that they exude where they have almost walked into life and expected for every woman that they interact with to provide for them some type of physical interaction. And I think it is very harmful and very hurtful and can cause a lot of emotional and spiritual disconnection when it comes to raising a boy and understanding that not every girl wants something from you. Not every girl is trying to, tempt you or give you something in any kind of downtrodden manner. I think it's really important, as I stated, being a girl mom, understanding that, the way that I show my daughter how to take into account, the differences between girls and boys is very important because this is the foundation that you have to lay for a young girl to understand. You do not parade yourself around little boys in a way that is, in a tempting, manner. Making sure that they are, behaving appropriately and not only giving themselves away in a showy nature, not, raising a showy girl who understands, you know, I'm not going to act like this when I'm around boys. And I'm going to make sure that I understand if I wouldn't like someone to do that to me, I'm not going to do that to them. I think that is the best way to raise girls into being in their divine matriarch when they become older women because you won't have a situation where there is an influx of women who are taking their feminism in an inappropriate way and dominating the male experience with overt sexuality. So I feel like it's just really important to understand these contrasts and to really dive deep into your understanding of, gender roles. Who are we supposed to be to one another? Why do you expect, in your memory, your reflexes automatically to respond with, are you giving me something? Or your body mind just moves in a way that is indicative of, oh, I thought you were going to do this. I feel like it is definitely a traumatic response. It's definitely a psycho emotional response when it comes to the boy child, and I feel like I am definitely somebody who's very adamant about being in the appropriate dress, around boys and understanding that you showing them, you know, um, your response to them or how you respect them or don't respect them is going to create for them a reflexive memory. So if you are the type of person who does not care about how they dress in front of a young boy, if you're not a woman who is modest and covered and understands, the reflexive memory is going to recall these memories in any situation when they run into someone of, the opposite gender. I think it's very helpful to keep that in mind as someone who is supposed to be a mature and inspirational individual for a young boy to become a young man, to not be putting yourself in a position where you are creating that temptress ideology in them, and then they grow through their lives and they think every girl has come to give them something or take something away from them. So I think it's really nice to understand how reflexive memory works. And then, it just talks a lot about how important, emotions are. And like it states here, the correlation between the strength of the original emotional event and the likelihood of retrieval of that event is as astoundingly high, around 90%. So whatever it is that is stored in a boy's memory, there's a 90% chance that he is going to recall on that one memory, and he is going to innately move in a direction that recalls that emotional, whether it's trauma or, thought process. Understanding how outward nature that boys are is definitely really helpful as a woman to raise healthy young men who are, self-assured and love themselves and are not going to accept anything that is thrown their way. I think it's really important, like I stated, on multiple occasions here on my channel. I may not be a boy mom yet, but I'm already setting the groundwork for when I have a son, and to understand the psychology or in the the psyche of the boy child, how I want to lay that foundation for him so that he knows that girls are not supposed to act this way with you, around you. Your innate nature is not to provide with a service or with, some sort of outward natured act of sorts. So I just think it's really important to being in a society where we don't have to have so much stress on what the genders are supposed to be to one another, and we'll understand innately that we should treat each other how we would want to be treated, and to have that give and take nature. You give me respect, I'm giving you respect. You should automatically show that in your behavior. And I feel like it is very important for this generation to really have kind of a sit back and understand, who are we supposed to be to one another? Are we supposed to throw ourselves at strangers? Are we supposed to walk through this life expecting something to be given to us when people are not required to give to you what you feel like you are supposed to be getting based on how society writes our gender roles between one another? I just thought that this was a really deep and really impactful and meaningful section. I'm gonna, finish reading through the rules here. I just think it's really understanding how to keep yourself psychologically safe in any environment that you're in, for boys, for girls. I don't feel like it's fair to have to segregate, one another, to block those tempting natures, because we live in one world. We don't have two worlds. We live in one world. Girls and boys need to know how to act with one another and how to behave with each other, not having to separate each other, because brothers and sisters have to understand how to behave with one another and how to reflect that with others in, whether it be school and in sports or wherever they're going to have to take that with them. I should have a brotherly outlook on how I treat a boy who, doesn't have to be my biological brother for me to treat him as a brother with respect, or to say, okay, I'm going to treat you like my sister, like I have respect for you, and I'm not going to demand anything from you because I respect you type of nature, not being blood tied siblings. Just understanding that brotherly and sisterliness is a foundation of respect. So in rule number 6 here, it states blame is a central propaganda strategy in all forms of warfare, including the battle between the genders. It is used to deny responsibility and guilt, to take refuge in surplus importance. It's not my fault. We couldn't help it. They did it to us. Rule number 7. A game keeps all players equally secure in their roles, but rewards each differently. In the traditional man-woman game, the payoffs were as follows. So this just kind of states for you here what men get out of this game and then what women get out of this game. So for men, it states here, men got the feeling of power. Men got the privilege of public action. Men got responsibility and the guilt that goes with action. Men got the illusion of control. For women, it states women got the power of feeling. Women got the privilege of private being. Women got innocence and the shame that goes with passivity. Women got the illusion of security. So I feel like it's really nice to understand that kind of game that men and women play back and forth with one another, and how young people are picking up on those things. And that reflexive memory, what they see is what they're going to do. Before you understand words as a baby, as a newborn, you are moving out of reflex. When you were in your mother's womb, you moved out of reflex. You didn't move or do things because you knew how to express it with words. You did it because the brain is a computer and it computes to your nervous system. And those are very important and very dangerous ways for someone to be misled by seeing things before they know what it is and just doing it. And it definitely sets our children up for a very bleak future in that way if they don't understand how they are supposed to be, and how to keep them safe from seeing the adverse actions being done in public places, whether it's being done in private, making sure that boys and girls are acting in a common ground with one another is the only way that our society can flourish. And I feel like I am definitely someone who is very passionate about that. I have spoken about this on multiple occasions here on my channel, and keeping my foundation straight and understanding my matriarch and what my responsibilities are. This is definitely a part of the matriarch, understanding how I want my daughter to be raised so that when she grows and she gives birth to a son, she will understand how her behavior should be with her son, because her behavior already reflected what it should be with her brother. So I think it is very important to understand how these things develop later on into life. If you are someone that did not have any respect for boys as a young girl, how are you going to grow to be a respectful woman for your son one day? I think that is something that is very important to me. Even before I, gave birth to my daughter, she wasn't, particularly planned. But I knew that the day that I gave birth to either a girl or a boy, there was going to be a foundation of truth that is going to be placed in them for them to understand the commonality between the two. So I think that this is a very good piece of information. It looks like they've got in this section, it looks like in total there are 10 general rules when it comes to the gender game, but it's definitely a really good section in this book. I'm just going to show here where I'm reading from. Ending the blame game. And for anyone who is, looking to understand the contrast between male and female and gender roles and who we're supposed to be to one another, and the cruelness of this blame game that a lot of people play, and it's your fault, you shouldn't be so beautiful, or justifying the nature of actions and saying, oh, this person's acting like that because of this or that, instead of looking at it for what it is and denouncing it right on the spot. It definitely has created a lot of violence in our society, and it's never going to stop until they teach, in school or in some sort of way, how girls and boys should act with one another, and how we should try to keep our children safe from acting outwardly with other children and not understanding what they're really mimicking other than what their reflexive memory has seen be done. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it 2 thumbs up. As I stated, being a single mom, it is very important for me to create this foundation of understanding for my daughter, and to keep that bridge and that water well flowing when it comes to the boy child. I don't have to be a boy mom in order for me to feel passionate about this topic. As a matriarch, it is important for us, especially, being a Black woman in the diaspora. I'm definitely very adamant about treating my fellow brothers, and even outside of the diaspora, treating strangers, people that I come into contact with from the opposite gender, with with respect. Space is respect. I don't have to, you know, befriend you or do anything with you. My space is my respect. Your boundaries are your boundaries, and that is my formality of respect. So I think it's really important for our next coming up generations to understand the importance of it and how we can keep the crime rates down from, these gender based crimes that are being enacted in our society, and how it is really flooding the minds of the youth, and how we can keep them safe from destroying themselves, and um, create a better society in a world where we can live together without the fear of performances. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate my new subscribers, viewers. Definitely stay tuned. I will have lots more immersive content, especially in the topic of the boy child, understanding the dynamics between one another, and trying to cultivate brothership and sistership in a very wholesome, whole minded formality. Thank you so much for watching.